Opposing Gloves here, and today we're going to be looking at Edison. We're going to be taking a look at the envelopes down here at the bottom, and we're going to be taking a look at the tools in the tools section. So right off the bat, you see we have a thing for envelopes, but they're all grayed out, and that's because we don't have an active envelope. So we have some envelopes down here. We have a panning envelope, a volume envelope, a stereo separation envelope, and a all-purpose envelope to be used under special circumstances with the equalizer and with the scratch effect. So we see that the x-axis represents time, and then the y-axis basically represents the parameter that we're adjusting. So for example, volume, increase volume at this point in time, decrease it over here. Panning, pan what is this, right, pan left over time, stuff like that. And as we activate envelopes, we see they become active in our display, and that may or may not be something that we want. Maybe we want to cancel them all, so we'll turn them all off and it resets them. That's what the first option underneath the tool icon does. If you go to an envelope and have it active while you're there, we have a couple additional options. These have to do with selections, so if you have selections, you can add points, pretty much it. We have the ability to flip vertically, scale levels, normalize levels, a whole bunch of nifty things. I'll let you come in here and mess with them. They let you just scale and mess with your automation to get it just the way you want. Or maybe you're looking for an interesting way to really mess with the envelope. Not automation, these are envelopes. You can do that here. We have the ability to create a sequence. That's pretty cool. This one I will mention. And we're able to determine the shape of these over time in a way that's rhythmically useful. So we can create some stabs. Now this is panning, so we might not want to do this on the panning envelope. It'll be panned in a rhythmic sequence, but you can if you want. So that's pretty much what I'm gonna leave this at. You can come in here and screw with these. They're in pretty much every plugin FL has, if it has an envelope. We have amp, so we're able to mix these down. So this will basically render it to our file. So now it's been rendered. We may not want that. So what we can do is we can undo that, and we're back where we started. And so, yeah, so if you've got, maybe you want to do repeated enveloping, I don't know, you can do that. We have an amp here. This is pretty cool because it sounds like it's just volume control, but you have control over left and right channels, control over panning, and then you have additional left to right control as well as the stereo separation knob, which is pretty cool. These are in the mixer channel too, so you can mess with them there. They are the bottom ones. And you also could change your pan law from circular to triangle. Just leave it on circular. It basically makes it so that the panning sounds the same volume no matter where it's at. And yes, so as you can see down here, we have separated and merged. So same deal. Okay, cool. So let's move on to the next thing. The next thing, we can change the polarity, so it'll flip your waveform, normalize it. So if it's not been scaled to maximum, you can do that. It's a very common button. And the additional normalize button exists here. So you see it's normalized our audio and so forth. Okay, so that's all that does. And then we're going to go to fade in, fade out, declick in, declick out. So if you make a point like so, put Alt-M and make a new region, and we'll put it somewhere. Well, if I play this region, there we go. You see it clicks. I might not want that clicking, and so I can click in or click out. So maybe when it reaches the end of the region, it clicks because there's another thing going on over there. So you may need to declick both sides, but it basically is just a mega small fade to get rid of the click. I'm going to declick in. You see it goes away. No more clicking. So pretty cool. We're able to also fade in, fade out. Those are a little more extreme, but they will fade our samples. So if we go back a couple steps here and just go ahead and select it, we can also fade in, fade out right here. And you see they have fade in / declick out. So if you left click, it'll fade in. If you right click, it'll declick. So if I fade out, you see it fades out. And if I hit it repeatedly, it will repeatedly fade out. So that's pretty cool. Same for the fade in. If I right click, it'll just declick. And if you didn't see that, you see I have a declick out right here. So we know the command was sent. Okay, so that's what's going on there. We have the ability to center our waveform on the axis in case we have like DC offset or something funny. We're able to change the average amplitude back to 0. We have time, so we're able to reverse it. And okay, time stretch, pitch shift. If we click this, you'll see that it looks just like the drum stretch thing. We have a formant preservation option as well as a time stretch option. We already looked at this briefly. I just showed you that it was a thing, but you can multiply time, change the pitch, and then you can do a finer adjustment. You can change the multiplication that happens, and choose your algorithm, pretty basic stuff. Just come in here, mess with some settings, get it the way you want. And yes, so after that, we have, if we come down here, we have the same setting only for drum loop stretch, which now this one is to try and preserve the tail end of your drum loop. So it's not to like change your drum loop to fit time. It's to hopefully preserve the tails of your drum loop when they're chopped. And we did take a little bit more in-depth look at this, but we can turn on, that's a preview. So you see there, that's because of the loop. And we're using the multiple with the grain echoes. So you see it goes away when we turn the loop off. Random stereo, even though it says random presence, it's basically just randomizing stereo a bit. And the way we deal with the tail envelope, the way we deal with the decay of the tail of the drum sound. So there's that. It's not a setting I use, so I'm not going to go much more into it. Claw machine and scratch envelope. These are pretty cool. Let's grab a rhythmic sample. Actually, I want to keep this open for the EQ. So let's really quick go into the EQ. So if we come over here to equalize, we have this control Q. We have this control Q, which is the shortcut. On equalize, we have some cool settings in here. Okay, this is like a freaking dope equalizer. It's like just amazing. So by default, yours will probably look like this. And we see that we have our frequency spectrum along the bottom and the scale of our frequency. And what's neat about this is, sure, it's a linear EQ, so we can go in and EQ. I'm assuming you know what an EQ is. But what's really nifty about this thing is we have some options for trying to get notes and trying to get harmonics. So we can filter unharmonics, and we can filter unharmonics normal and filter unharmonics wide. So filter unharmonics normal, you see it just generated something. You might be going, what the heck just happened? Well, if we change our frequency scale so we can zoom in a bit, we see that it has filtered whatever it deems is not a harmonic. It's tried to only include what is part of the harmonic series. And so that would sound like this. And we get that click ring. It's a result of the way, because this is basically a bunch of bandpass filters. So we're getting this ringing. We could use smooth, and it gets rid of that. And we could adjust this. The phases allows the graph to have control over where the waveform starts in phase. So this can be a cool button to toggle on and off, just see what happens. We also have the ability to, so that's what do we choose? Normal. We have wide, which is just wide. And then we also have, and that would sound like this. And if we turn on our smooth and phase, sounds pretty cool. And then if we do narrow probably is not the one you want. But if you want to do it, you see it's narrow. They're very small, a lot more ringing. You can like audibly hear ringing. But with smooth, it gets rid of it. But if we turn that off again, yeah, so you probably are not going to use narrow too often, but some interesting options there. I usually use filter unharmonics wide. It's just so cool. And now I turn on phase and smooth. Without it, this is what it sounded like before. So I actually think this is a marked improvement. So I'm going to even accept that. Like, that's how much more I like that. So that's the equalize tool. I just wanted to show you that. Now, if we grab a drum loop, let's just come in here and find a drum loop of some kind. Cool. So we have a drum loop in here. Cool. Now what we're going to do, by the way, just drag and drop in samples like that. Man, there's some DAWs that's like so impossible. Anyways, I digress. Let's come back to what we're doing. So we have drum loop stretch. We have a claw machine. Okay, so for the claw machine, we have to have some chops. And I just want to do this with a drum loop. It makes more sense. I'm going to do medium auto slicing. So basically the way this works is it sets a threshold, and wherever a piece of audio breaks the threshold, it's going to put a sample chop there. And so I'm going to do medium slicing, and it chops it up for me. And you see we got clicking and stuff. At this point, I could go in and declick my regions in and out if I wanted. And we'll look at that in a little bit. But to also cover this just a little bit more, dual auto slicing. Whoops. You have to have a selection because it will only auto chop what you have selected. See, less samples, more. I usually leave it on medium. Sharp is like a lot more usually. And then we also have small grid, medium. So we're able to chop according to the grid. Maybe your sample lines up at a tempo and you give it the tempo so you can just chop it according to the grid. So, okay, we have our abilities there. Now, what the claw machine does, we need to set a tempo too. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit F2. and we're going to go to our tempo, and we're going to auto detect with constant tempo, and then round 111. It's probably 110, but I don't know. It's a human, I'm assuming, playing this. But we have this. No, it doesn't sound. It sounds like someone sampled it. I don't know what it sounds like. Anyways, you can hear that nothing's happened yet because we haven't done anything. Now, if we go to the claw machine, it becomes active because it needs a tempo. And what it does is it takes the tempo and it deletes things every so often. And so we could, for example, every fourth of a beat, trash it, meaning delete it. And we're going to snap it to the markers. So if we preview this, it appears to have sped up because we've removed a regular portion of the beats. If we remove something that's a little more irregular, like triplets or something, it'd be more interesting. It's a little harder to understand what's going on there, but, well, harder as in to make sense of it. Over here, we've got our half note beat, quarter note, 8 beat. So we select our period here, and then every time we want to get rid of something, we just select that here. So it's like a regular deletion tool. Snap to the markers. We can, now if we accept this, it actually deletes things. As you see, they're gone. So we don't want that. So what we can do is we can go to claw machine, and we can do compensation stretching. And now it keeps the same amount of time, but it does, you can hear stretching artifacts now. You can hear like in the background there. So, but that's a pretty cool tool. I quite like it. And you can get to it here too, the claw machine. It pops up right there. So pretty nifty. It reaches in and grabs the stuff. All right, so let's go ahead and jump to the next one, which is the scratch. And for this, you need an envelope. If we just choose scratch, that's what happens. If we play, we got nothing. And you might be going, what just happened? Well, this uses the all-purpose envelope. And what it does is, as this all-purpose envelope varies, it will scratch it. It's going to speed up or slow down the playback of the sample. SliceX has another option for scratching I think is a bit better for live performance. But now if we choose scratch, you see our drum loop just looks all mangled because we've given it a displacement. So if we play it, now we gave it some pretty extreme values. So let's give it something a little more, a little less extreme, like that. Now let's scratch it. Boom, 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 boom. So you see, it's like someone, playing it back and forth on a turntable or something. So that's all that does. Another use for the all-purpose envelope is in conjunction with the equalizer tool. So if we come in here and use the all-purpose envelope and put it in here, we can then apply an EQ and the all-purpose envelope will go away. But what they don't tell you is if you want to undo just the EQ move, that's where the undo EQ thing would come in handy. But I just undo it like this. So I don't know. It says undo according to the all-purpose envelope. It's a mystery to me. So if anyone figures it out completely, let me know. But I know that they're linked. It disappears, but I don't hear an audible difference usually when I play it back. So that's just a feature that's still a mystery. Who knows? Someone will tell me how it works, though, eventually. So we have channels. We have swap channels. So the left and right channels get swapped. Convert channels to mono left channel. So it can make an entire file based off of the left or the right, as in mono, so it's the same in both. Then we have convert mono signal to mono format. That takes a mono signal and it will turn it into the same signal in both left and right channels. We can generate noise. And now the noise generation works if we have nothing selected, it will put noise over everything. If we have just a region selected, it will only generate noise in that region. And it's white noise. I'll spare you the listening. We are able to run scripts. Now this is kind of interesting. We looked at this a little bit already, but we have amp examples. And if we run a script like amp, you see it says simple amplification. It's just an amplifier. That's it. So it's a pretty cool way to sort of get your feet wet in writing scripts if you're into that sort of a thing. And so, yeah, you're able to do that. Be careful. Some of these don't work inside of here. They're example scripts. These ones, I'm a little hesitant to touch these, like hello world. Like, who knows what that will do? I'm pretty sure it'll shut down FL. But these other ones like bit reduction, and you can actually reduce bits, and you can actually see what bit reduction does, which just increases noise. So cool. Now let's go over to noise gating. So we need to set a threshold, and we can do it two ways. We can set a threshold like this. Let me select everything. We can set a threshold. Actually, let me just select nothing, so green's a little more visible. And by the way, you can expand Edison by just hitting enter or double clicking on the top. So that's pretty handy. I'm going to just resize it up a bit. So you're able to, oh, that moved my controls around. It's a little less friendly. You're able to set a threshold according to this green line. And what I can do is I can actually select a region and I can make it acquire the noise profile. So if I come in here, go to noise gating, acquire noise threshold, and it will set the threshold to whatever the highest peak is inside that noise profile. So it's basically auto detecting that. And then you can do a couple things. I'm only going to show you one. You can gate it, you can trim it, and you can trim all noise and slice up. So these two delete stuff, and that's like normally not desired because you're usually dealing with something in a rhythmic fashion. I mean, not always, but most of the time when I'm in here, unless I'm doing sample editing, but I'm normally not dealing with noise at that point. So I'm just saying, normally you're going to want to gate it, and that'll just simply turn everything that was in that threshold to 0. If we give ourselves a higher threshold, like bam, and then we said, hey, I want you to gate this, then it will, well, let's go ahead and gate the noise. Oh, well, maybe it has to receive it from a section. Let's try acquiring the noise threshold that way. So acquire the noise threshold, and then we'll say gate noise. There you go. Disappears. Oh, it's only in our selected region because that's what we have selected, but it would do it for the whole thing when nothing's selected. So we gate the noise, you see it all disappears, and we're left with, and there's a little bit of chatter, but that's not a big deal right now because we're not using it for anything. But that's how you would gate noise. Apparently, you do have to acquire it through here. That's how you would do that. We have spectral options here. So these are specialized options for processing the audio. I'm going to leave it the way it is, and let's do the convolution reverb. So in here, we have our convolution reverb. We're able to offset it, add a tail. So otherwise, it would just chop it. So when you apply it, I'll show you in just a sec. This is our impulse response. I'm assuming you know what convolution reverb already is. You notice we have similar graphs in here, so they give you quite a bit of options. Whoops. Let me reset this. And now if I preview it, okay, cool. That's great. So that's how that works. Now if we hit accept and go back here, you see there's now a tail on it. That's what it's referring to. So, okay. That's what convolution. Blur is cool. Blur multiplies the sample across itself according to an impulse response. So I'm going to change this to a very narrow response, and there won't be that much multiplication. So it will sound very much like convolution reverb. So we're going to do a single curve here. And I'm going to change this to a single curve, and I'm going to take it down and preview it. Let me make this a much shorter. That's so cool. Okay, this one didn't sound very much like convolution reverb, but sometimes they sound just like convolution reverb, but it's multiplying itself across it, and you're able to change this. You can get different rhythmic sequences. If you give it something like a vocal sample or something tonal, you can create a really cool pad effect. And so I encourage you experimenting with this. Again, narrow things are going to sound like that whooshy effect. The other stuff's going to blur it. It'd be like, whoa, like a long pad. You heard what it sounded like. You're able to offset it, change the amount in the mix. So that's pretty cool. That's cool. I like the blur option a lot. We already looked at the equalizer, acquire noise profile. We already looked at, and clean up noise or denoise is like, okay, so we'll acquire the noise profile. Yes. Oh, no. We better select something that's not noise. We'll make this little blip right here noise. And so we'll go boom, boom. Acquire noise profile. It is acquired the noise profile. Clean up noise. And you see here, it gives us a wonderful denoiser that we're able to go in and be a lot more selective about how we get rid of the noise. We can change the frequency scale, and we can remove certain characteristics of the noise that we don't like. We can change the threshold should we desire. And as you can see, we can apply reduction across the noise. So this is like a crazy denoiser. We can also, if we have clipping, we can try to get rid of the clipping with a declipper. Good luck with that. And clicking. So it can actually look for clicks in your profile. But some pretty interesting stuff. We would need to, if we need to acquire it, you can also acquire it from there. So pretty cool denoiser. Regions. We're able to normalize all our regions, which will just normalize. You can normalize regions individually, but you can normalize them all in one go. You can declick them all in, out. So if you have clicks at the beginning of all your regions, just hit declick in all regions and it will declick them all. And you can do the same thing for the out. Also, perfect all regions will do it for all regions. So it'll declick everything in, out. So it's like one setting. I usually grab this one unless I'm messing with regions specifically. We're able to tune the loop. So if you have a loop, and it will actually put a loop in there for us if we don't, you're able to change the length, the tension, which you got me on sort of what this controls. We have the snap, and so this changes where our loop is snapping to. And we also are able to introduce blur. That's cool. The scale of this blur and the amplitude. Which the scale sounds sort of like an envelope. But anyways, that's what's going on there. You can mess with that. That's just something to be really experimental with. We also have in here, nearing the end here, convert to score and dump to piano roll. So you can click this, and what it'll do is it will take this information and it will dump it to a piano roll channel. So it just dumps it to the top channel. That's what's going on. So that's a little unintuitive. But if you want whatever's in here to be represented as MIDI, you can do that. So if you were to take this exact same loop, drop it into Slice X, and then dump to piano roll from Edison, making sure that your channel is selected, I'm assuming it would put that information there. I don't know, weird. I'm in here for audio, not usually MIDI, so it's not a big deal. And then we also have a couple other options down here. We have send a playlist as an audio clip or send a selected channel. Alternatively, in my preferred method, you can send a playlist right here, and you can drag and drop this wherever you want it, in a sampler channel or whatever, via just this little export icon right there. And you see there it is. Or amazing clip sample. Now this only drag the selected area. So if we select everything, it'll drag the whole thing over. And I clicked the wrong button. If we click this button, it'll send it to the playlist. And so that's just a faster way of doing it. If you have a selection on your playlist and you hit it, it will send it to the beginning of your selection. So if you want it to be lined up with something. So that is how those things work. Let's go ahead and just cover the last couple. I mean, there's not that many left here because we've already covered pretty much all of this. First, this little down triangle down here will take you to it will give you every tool on Edison in that little triangle. So if you're a menu person, it's all in menu format right there. Undo, claw machine, normalize, trim regions. Oh, and gate noise if you right click. So if you see a slash, that means that it has a right click functionality. So left and right will do different things. Fade in, declick, fade out, declick. We're able to run our scripts from here. This is what is this? Time stretching. That's what that is. Time stretching. See, I prefer words over these pictures, but the clock, time, I see what they did there. We have convolution reverb, which is pretty cool. It's like a little chapel. I think this is hilarious. And I don't know why I think it's funny, but you can come in here and get to your convolution reverb that way. The blur tool, which is pretty cool. Use your raindrop. I'm kind of curious why raindrop. Equalizer, denoiser, regions. This is auto slice, so this is an important one. I touch this one a lot. We have dull auto slicing, medium, and sharp. We already talked about this, and auto slicing to the grid. We're able to, tune loop. So there's your two. Well, that's annoying. I wish it didn't automatically play when you select something, you know? Wish that was an option. The save, and then the 2 export commands. So that's pretty much Edison. Like I mean, there's not really a way to show this use in a track. It's more of just something that you pull out as a utility when you need it. But that's what these things do. If you have any questions, let me know. Subscribe, and have a blessed day.